Good morning, everyone. At this time, I will call the August 30 work session for the Harnett County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to welcome everyone. It's good to see you here today. One piece of business before I forget it. Next week, we will not meet on Monday since that's Labor Day. We will meet on Tuesday, September the 6th at 9 a.m. right here. And at this time, I will ask Vice Chair Nickel if he would lead the pledge and have the invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for another wonderful day on this earth. Lord, thank you for all the many blessings that you bestow upon us each day. Lord, I pray that you be with all the children that are going back to school this week. May you open their minds and their hearts so they can absorb information and be a contributing member to society. Lord, I pray that you be with all the first responders, all of our military, and all of our healthcare professionals, Lord, as we're still going through trying times with this COVID and other variants that are coming out. Lord, please be with this Board of Commissioners today. Let us have our open hearts and open minds so we may make the right decisions for this county.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Okay, I think we have one item of business. Item 16 on the agenda needs to be removed and placed on the September 13 work session. Any other changes to the agenda?
No.
All right, hearing no other changes, we will move right into item 3, discuss the policy to update the land use plan. Mr. Locklear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We came to you last month in a request that we consider changing our policy at which how the frequency of our updates to our land use plan and doing amendments. Currently, the ordinance allows for a person or an applicant or a citizen to apply and for an amendment to our land use plan, and it worked just like a rezoning process, a 30-day process. This isn't something that we've had to deal with a lot historically, and I think as we've started to use our land use plan as a factor in how our subdivision developments are created or can be created, it can allow to add more density. I think developers have figured this out, and so they've started to come to us more frequently in amendments to our land use plan. Just a history on land use plans. Historically, they're not meant to be updated every month. A lot of places, and I just passed out a little one sheet handout here to let you know what some of the other folks in our jurisdiction are close by, how often they update their land use plan. And as far as amendments go, of course, you want to do the large scale update to the land use plan every 5 to 7 years. And it's nice if you can obviously get to those points to do anything large scale. But as we've kind of looked around, and we kind of always knew in the back of our minds, like I said, historically, we just hadn't had this many requests, that we need to be taking more time in order to do these, because they're just it's not a 30-day review. This is something that once you kind of make this move to change an area on your land use plan, you can set a precedence for how that area grows for the next X number of years. So it's an important change whenever these things happen. It's not a rezoning. There's not a state guideline that tells you exactly how to do that like it is for rezonings or text amendments or things like that. It's something that we set on a local level on how often we want to look at it. And just us not having done it before when we done our land use plan originally in 2015. We put some parameters in there on how often we wanted to do it, but we didn't probably think it through good enough, in my opinion. So before us today, as far as a discussion, like I said, we're at the pleasure of the board at what the board feels. I've mentioned I gave you the handout as what some of the other municipalities and counties do that are close by. And one other thing I wanted to mention too is 160D and the importance, as I just mentioned, of using your land use plan. That's a state law that's recently came through, and it basically says that, hey, when you make a decision on a rezoning or anything, you need to be looking at your land use plan to do that. So that's what we do. I know Miss McCoy says all the time, like, Lord have mercy, these guys support everything. But in our land use plan, if it's a project between 210 and 401, that's where our land use plan said that we want to grow. We have a large sewer line that runs through the middle. That's where we have utilities. And so we're required by law to look at the land use plan when we make decisions to support things. Sometimes when you see them outside of those areas, say, for example, the one we had just recently on 27, that was outside our land use plan, said that they wanted to grow that way. So we didn't support that. So just important to understand that we're required by law through 160D, through that requirement, that we look at our land use plan. So it's more important than it's ever been, not just for Harnett County, but for every county in this state, that they have an updated land use plan and they also look at it every time that they make a decision. So I just wanted to point that out. I'll go through these real quick. Durham City and County, they wait 4 months before they do it. High Point, approximately 3 months. Orange County, they do it once a year. They'll do a minor amendment on a quarterly basis. Person County, approximately 2 months. Pitt County, 3 months. Zebulon, minor amendments every other year. Major amendments and updates, evaluation every 5 years. And then Moore, Johnson, and Cumberland, they didn't specifically mention it in their plan, kind of like we did currently. We have spoke with the leadership. We spoke with Brent and Coley, and we felt like that minor amendments would be twice a year, would make a lot of sense for us to look at that. And then major amendments and updates, of course, we would go with the standard of every 5 to 7 years, which I think some of the board members expressed that maybe we put something in there that requires us to do that versus just going with the what it says. So those are our suggestions, and we are certainly open to suggestions, discussion.
Any questions or comments for staff?
I will comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you're going in the right direction.
What
I think you're going in the right direction.
Okay.
So
Good.
I give you a praise this morning.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Mr. Locklear, could you give me an example of minor amendments as opposed to major amendments?
A minor amendment would be what we've been getting. Those where there's a specific tract of land, a developer sees that, hey, look, if I can get this thing to low density versus medium density, then I can pick up 25 lots. And a great example is the one on 27. That one sits right in the middle of low density, and they want to change it. So once you make that change, and it is 2 large tracts of land, I'll admit, but once you make that change, then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, this is an area right across from the school that we want to see start really growing, and that doesn't. Sometimes that makes the case, and sometimes it doesn't. Like I said, the perfect ingredients for growth are, whether you like it or not, is going to be water and sewer. It's going to be utility availability. If it's there, then you're asking to grow in those areas, and so those areas don't have that. So that would be a minor change. A major change would be if we looked at, a full-blown policy where we looked at, say, for example, the Northwest area plan. That's a small area plan where we looked at the entire area and said, yep, we drilled down and said, this is how we'd like to see this area grow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the board?
I got one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
You do take in consideration the traffic in that area too, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
just wanna make
And,
sure.
and that's part of it too, because in 30 days, you really can't really take into consideration all the high level things that need to be reviewed to make that type of change, because it does change. It can change, like I said, the traffic patterns. It can do all those things. So that's why it's important to kind of push these things off. If someone really wants to change, or they feel like it makes sense, and sometimes we support changes that happen. We supported one earlier in the year. Um, that but we give it, a couple of months. Let us look at the traffic. Let's look at the schools. Let's look at all these different impacts that can happen.
If it's low density, in RA 30, you change it to medium density, it's still RA 30.
That is correct.
How do they get more houses?
Because in our it can get complicated, but we offer a compatibility or conservation subdivision option. That is based off two things: your zoning and your land use, what your land use says for the area. So one ingredient is your zoning. So your zoning's RA 30. The other ingredient is the land use plan. Is the land use plan saying, hey, this is an area we want to grow? Is this what? So we take into consideration both of those things. So what developers have figured out, that RA 30 is one ingredient, but I can leave that alone because it's not going to make sense, because by law I'm going to get into trouble if I try to spot zone an area. So if it's an RA 30, if it's RA 40, I'm not going to be able to go right in the middle of that and zone it RA 20. But I can change this land use plan. And once I change that land use plan, which is the second ingredient that you have to have, that says, hey, this area wants to be more dense. The county, we've decided that this area wants to be more dense. If they can change that, then they can get more houses. And that all goes into a formula. And if it's in the right zoning, if it's the right um, land use classification, and then there's other things. How much open space? If they decide, if they have a ton of wetlands, they can give all that up and put it into open space so it stays natural and preserved, which is what we want. That's an amenity that we would like to see for the county, because it's a conservation thing. Sidewalks, street trees, curb and gutter, concrete curb and gutter. You see wider streets. You see, I'm sure I'm missing something there too. Maybe the buffer at the front is different, and some of those things. So it's amenities. So if a developer comes in and gets all those amenities, and the zoning and the land use matches up, then they can get more houses. And that is something that leadership in this county, because a normal county subdivision usually has open ditches. It may be on a larger lot, but it'll have open ditches. It will not have sidewalks. It will not have street trees, and it'll be a basic subdivision. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are some places where that makes sense, and those are beautiful subdivisions. But the leadership several years ago in this county said, look, we want to get the same quality of development that we're seeing take place in Wake County and Johnston County and all these other places. And it's a carrot. So in order to do that, you got to give up some density in order to get those amenities. And that's what we decided to do.
Okay, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Is this like your recommendations on the bottom, is that like filling the loophole that they've come up with?
It's not necessarily.
More setting a policy.
Yeah, it's more setting a policy. I don't necessarily, they haven't really found a loophole, so to speak. It's just setting a policy so they don't come so often, so we can give it more time and give it a more adequate review. And like I said, land use plans historically are not meant to be updated monthly. That's the plan that we set in place for us to grow for the next 5 to 7 years. So if we're getting ready to possibly go through a land use plan update. We're going to go through and spend all this money and all this time and effort to get it exactly how everybody, citizens and the leadership, wants to grow in Harnett County. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to come back the very next month because the developer can get more density and change our plan. So what we're saying is we don't want to see those small amendments happen so frequently. We want to see, we don't mind that they're happening. We understand change could happen, but it needs to happen ever so often. And we need to have time as a staff to put thought into those changes when it happens, so we can help you all make better decisions long term.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, you've got the recommendations from staff in front of you. What's the consensus of the board about that?
Good with the recommendations.
I'd like to see it be 5 years, and if you need an extension on that 5th year, you come to the board and ask for a year's extension or whatever.
Take out the gray area of 5 to 7.
Do it.
Takes out the gray area of 5 to 7.
Now, are we talking about like to amend like the land use plan from start to finish, or are we talking
Yes.
about
Talking about
Yeah.
a major amendment.
Yeah,
Major
item
amendment.
2 on your recommendation.
Okay. So
I would,
you're good with twice a year on the minors, and then major would be every 5 years. Okay.
yeah.
I mean, I'm a planner, so I'm good with that. So I'm a planner at heart, I should say.
Let me ask another question. I know I'm a little slow here, but and just for an example, the one that came before us last time, and we asked for
More information.
traffic study and some more information. So in that case, with this in place, then they could come back after 6 months, once they had that material together, rather than showing up the next one. Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, using that one for an example, that case would have been put in a hopper, and then we would have heard that, say, in January, or we would have heard it in July. Twice a year, we'll figure out what the best times of the year would happen, and we would have a lot more information, and then you would receive those similar to how you received it that time. You just wouldn't receive one every month like we're seeing now. So, yeah, so it'd be a little different.
What's your recommendation on when we start this?
Well, after we get your direction today, we'll have to go back and go through the text amendment process because this is in our UDO. It specifically states how to do it in our UDO. So we'll go back and amend the UDO to say twice a year and what have you. We may do the large amendment thing. I'll have to look at that. Yeah, I don't know if we want to paint ourselves into a corner with doing those mandatory every 5 years. I'm fine with that, but I do want us to. It is an expensive venture, and and I agree that it's an expense that in years past we haven't taken. Not our department, but as a county, we just hadn't taken it as serious as we should. But it looks like as we grow, we're becoming more educated in doing those things, doing a better job at keeping our land use plan updated, which is a great planning process that not this board, every board should go through every 5 years, 7 years.
What's the pleasure of the board?
With the minors twice a year and also every 5 years still. I mean, that'd be good.
Okay.
At least that way you get, a policy and some guidelines laid out so at least these builders and developers can start doing their due diligence. And it's not a shock to them when they get told no.
That's right. All right. Well, like I said, we'll go today, and you'll have another shot at this, so to speak, because when I come back to you, if something changes, if it's 2 years, it's just, it's not a big change for us. It's not a lot of text involved, I should say.
So we don't need this on the agenda.
It'll come back to you once he's completed the text amendment that goes with the UDO, so that we can.
This is just guidance.
Right.
Yeah,
So we know
this
what
is
to
just-
write
yeah.
into that.
Yeah, so you know how to write the
text amendment, basically. Yeah, we'll be back hopefully in another month or two. Slow these
Okay.
things down a little bit.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Smith, termination of the county COVID state of emergency.
Good morning. Coming before you this morning to talk about the termination of our state of emergency, our longest one, just shy of 2.5 years. The state has gone ahead and terminated theirs about 2 weeks ago. By terminating this, it doesn't affect any of our FEMA reimbursements that are in the pipe right now. We still have 2 that are there. One, we just it's been awarded, but we've gone back to ask some questions about the amount of money that they've authorized. So we're working that one, and we've got one more that we'll be actually putting in. But terminating this will not affect that process.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Smith? Yes, ma'am.
Do you expect we'll get any more money? We're getting any more money, for.
We've got one, we've got 2. We've actually got $130,000 of reimbursement that should be coming, and then we've got one more that we're submitting for around $30,000. And it has to do with a lot of the equipment and things like that we had to purchase during COVID.
Thank you. The reason I asked that question because there are a lot of changes being
Yes.
made here in the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the consensus of the board to approve this termination?
Just real quick, one thing. I just
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to make the board aware, you may be aware, but yesterday we lost a vital member of our emergency services team yesterday, Mr. Charles Gossett, who was my EMS compliance officer, passed away at home very unexpectedly. We'd ask that you keep the family and our family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right. COVID-16 vaccination funds. Mr. Rouse.
Let's see. Good morning. This is, you may recall last March, we got these funds, and one of the things we were going to do with them is install the automatic doors on our building and in the commons. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all those supplies together before the end of June, so we're going to have to re-go through that. He's still ordering them, so we got to reallocate the money for that purpose. The other thing we'll do with it is we can pay staff for vaccinations, and contract staff will use it for that. It's kind of limited on some of the things we can do with it, but we do want to get those doors, those automatic doors installed at both of those our buildings and in the commons, so people can, elderly can come in and they can have a handicap entrance to the door.
Any questions or comments about this? Everyone in agreement with this? Thanks, sir.
Thank
you. Okay, Ms. McCauley, I think you've got 3 items on here.
Actually have 5. I'll try to keep them short for you. They are all pretty straightforward. First up, we have state aid. Each year, the North Carolina General Assembly appropriates money for public libraries throughout North Carolina. These funds are intended to promote and aid in equalized public library services in communities throughout the state. The allocation is divided into 2 parts. Half of it is equally divided among all the counties plus 12 regional systems, and the remaining 50% is divided among library systems using an equalization formula with factors including population, per capita income, and maintenance of effort, which is what we contribute each year to our libraries through local funds. And that maintenance of effort factor is calculated or evaluated on a 3-year rolling average. So we're merely just asking for permission to apply for this year's state aid grant. The estimated amount for this fiscal year is $177,898, and there is no requirement for matching funds.
Is everybody good with moving forward on this?
There is a second pot of state aid coming later this year. Very similar, but it is a one-time allocation, and you'll be hearing more about that. It's about the same amount. All right, so next up we have the fee schedule revision. So the library has makerspace programming rooms that support STEM activities and a wide variety of learning opportunities for children, teens, and adults. And our tools and equipment include laser cutters and digital die cutting machines and 3D printers. And we began some programming last year in 2019 prior to COVID. So we established a fee schedule for some of the materials that our patrons can come in and purchase to be able to use those machines. They can also bring their own if they choose, but if they don't choose to do that, they can purchase ours. We, of course, did not do any of that programming during COVID, but we are ready to start back. Unfortunately, inflation has had a huge impact on the cost of the materials that we provide. In some cases, it's doubled or more than doubled, and so we need to take a look at the fees that we are charging for those materials. I did include those in your packet. We just want to change it to what they currently cost so that we're not losing money on people purchasing items from the library. Additionally, the library acquired more than 70 Chromebooks with a technology grant that we received this summer. Library patrons are going to be allowed to check these Chromebooks out for 2 weeks at a time, but we know that there's a possibility that a Chromebook's going to go missing or be damaged, so we need to also add Chromebooks to our feed schedule as well as peripherals that go with them. And I've also included that in the revised fee schedule that you have. And it's just replacement cost.
Any comments or questions about these fees, fee changes?
Chromebooks. Is there any fee to the citizens that check these out that don't bring them back in?
Yes, if they do not bring them back, they will be charged the fees on this fee schedule. If they don't bring back a Chromebook, the cost is $200 to replace it.
Right. That's what I want to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
That is why we want to add this to our fee schedule so that we can charge them if they do not bring it back or if they bring it back damaged.
Okay. I understand it better now since we've dropped a lot of other fees. We want to make sure that they're not getting away with just not bringing these Chromebooks back because it costs the county.
That's right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So next up on the agenda is our Dunn Library Consolidation Agreement. And I just want to take a moment to let you know that we are 1 month into our consolidation with the towns of Andrew, Coates, and Irwin. And it's been challenging, but it has gone incredibly well. The towns have been very cooperative, and the staff in the branch libraries, as well as our staff here, have been working together beautifully. I mean, they are committed to making this union a success. The entire process has been a very impressive demonstration of how government works together to make things happen for good in your community, from you, the commissioners who approve this, to county administration, to finance and human resources and legal and facilities. The list just goes on and on, and it's just been so encouraging to see everyone working together to make this happen. And I truly feel that we may not see a benefit immediately, but I am confident that we're going to see long-term impacts for public library services in this community for all our citizens. And I'm very proud to be part of that because I feel like that it is, for all of us, it's going to be a legacy of public library services in Harnett County that probably should have happened decades ago. So with that said, the City of Dunn has agreed to formally join the Harnett County Public Library Consolidation. We are asking for approval of the Library Consolidation Agreement between Harnett County and the City of Dunn. This agreement defines the financial, property, operational appropriations, and supervision of the Dunn Public Library under consolidation and will replace their 2014 interlocal agreement. You're already familiar with this document. We went over it in detail about a month ago. It's the same document that we had for Andrew, Coates, and Irwin. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to go into detail about it.
Any questions about this consolidation agreement or the lease agreement?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any question about item 8, but I would like to just take this opportunity to thank Ms. McCauley for her leadership through this process. I think it was probably a year and a half ago or so that you brought this to us and asked if this is something that you would like for us to have you to embark down that trail to try to see if you could bring this to pass. So I know it's been a long process. I appreciate your efforts, and I agree with you. I think it's something that's going to benefit our citizens well into the future. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
If there's nothing else, and thank you for that, Commissioner Matthews. If there's nothing else, we will place items 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the consent agenda for Tuesday. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hall, need to upgrade some equipment.
Sir. Just coming before you it's that time again. Every 4 or 5 years, we have to upgrade our core server infrastructure. The last time we did it was in 2018. And at that point in time, Kimberly helped me set up a technology fund to start preparing for these. So every 4 or 5 years, we've already got the money allotted for that. So I'll go ahead and answer the first question. We've got the money in the budget. It's ready to roll. Just because of the size of the expenditure, I like to come before you guys and get an official, yeah, let's move forward with it. So I just put some things together just to kind of give you a real brief overview. I mean, be glad to talk technology at any point with any one of you, but I don't want to make it long or boring. So just to clarify, we have 8 Dell VxRail Generation 14 servers currently at our law enforcement center. And then we have 7 servers over at our emergency services center. Those run everything that has to do with anything in the county. The way they're set up is currently the law enforcement center is our primary data center. Everything runs out of that closet and is replicated over to the emergency services center. It's an active failover scenario. So if a disaster comes and the law enforcement center disappears for whatever reason, and we can fail everything over to the emergency services center. One of the key things, and I threw this in there just to put up a beautiful chocolate lab. And just to give you an idea of the size of our servers, the podium here is probably a better judge, but the height of our servers is about as tall as a chocolate lab. And, there's 8 of those servers in our law enforcement center. And I've already kind of talked about this, but basically everything from the law enforcement center replicates over to emergency services. It's just a one-way pass. So everything in the emergency services currently is not in an active state. So it's kind of sitting there dormant, ready for a disaster to happen. One of the things that I really want to move forward with on this particular unit is we're going to get into an active scenario. So with the proposed core infrastructure, we're going to replace all these current 15 servers with 16 Generation 15 servers. Basically, the Generation 15 means it's just faster, more capable, cooler, more green, all that good stuff that everybody wants to hear about and all the needs that we have. So we'll increase our server count by 1 out of this, and so we'll have mirrored images at both closets this time around. And something called stretched cluster is included in this, and this gives us to where both sites are active. So it's beautiful for us, in fact, that we can use the resources out of both closets. And then if one closet goes down, all the resources in the other closet automatically falls over to the other one. It just gives us more resources to pull from and gives us less probabilities of failure and more opportunities to test the actual failover, because right now it would be really hard for us to truly test the failover from the current active and law enforcement center to the emergency services failover. So again, with the new servers, we're cutting the height in half. Everything is becoming more green, more power efficient, more capabilities. So, and the key piece that really is good is active. It's going to go both ways. So we're not just having cold resources sitting over in the closet just hoping to be used. These will actually be used in this scenario. Of course, with inflation and shortages and all the good stuff, everything's going up. So our spend last time was around $700,000. The spend this time is going to be close to $800,000. And we're increasing the server count on this particular one, and we're reducing the warranty to a 4-year warranty. But the 4-year warranty and the stretched cluster was my trade out to get the price at that same point. I wanted to make sure we got the active set up And so we kind of went down on a warranty to save some money. Initially, we'll probably have to go back and extend that warranty, but that way we could go ahead and get our stretch clustering in place. The other piece is that this is all on state contract, so we didn't have to go out to RFP, get 3 quotes and all that good stuff. It's all kind of washed out with the state contract stuff, so it simplifies the process tremendously. We got the state contract pricing and the best possibilities there. And again, we already have this funded through our 890 fund, the technology fund. So, and we'll continue preparing the next 4 or 5 years with that technology fund for the next expenditure. So, any questions or thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna have to ask, is that your lab?
I'm sorry?
Was that your lab?
No, I wish. It's a beautiful dog.
Nice looking dog.
Yeah, I know. We had a black lab years ago, but didn't replace him. So.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Oh, well, I guess the ask is if we could just put this on the agenda for approval next time.
What's the consent of the board? All right, move that to the consent agenda for
Okay.
Next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. All right, Mr. McNeil?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
First item I have is to be able to provide Lieutenant Bobby Hallman with his service revolver on his retirement at the end of the month. So that's our policy on, they have to serve at least 5 years for to be eligible to receive their weapon.
Anyone have any objections to allowing, I must call him Chief, Lieutenant Hallman to have his service weapon? No? We'll do that. We'll put that on the consent agenda.
The second item is a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Marshals. The purpose of this MOU is to allow the Marshals to assist us in locating and apprehending sex offenders who are not compliant with the law, they fail to register, or we lose track of them. Also included, the Marshals has a fund where they'll reimburse us up to $3,779.64 for the purchase of tablets that our deputies that check on sex offenders will be able to use in the field to keep track and accountability of checking on them each month.
How many of those tablets are we buying? How many tablets are we buying?
I think we're buying 4.
4?
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments about this, accepting this memorandum of understanding? All right, we will put that on the consent agenda for Tuesday, and thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ward. Talk to us about the Southeast wastewater pump station.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here to present the Southwest Wastewater Pump Station and Force Main project for you. This board, we have discussed this project for a couple of years now. And so we finally got permission from Fort Bragg to tie into their existing force main, or our existing force main that comes from Fort Bragg, which really opens up development in the southwest portion of the county. We have been limited there by our existing force main, which leaves our pump station along Highway 87. This project will expand that pump station and make some structural changes. And Fort Bragg has given us permission. We've already surveyed the line route to build a 20-inch force main down Highway 87. We will bore under Highway 87 before the Lower Little River crosses Highway 87 before you get into Spring Lake. That is in Cumberland County. And we will come over, tie into the existing force main, which leaves Fort Bragg on Manchester Road. that will allow us to sort of allow unfettered growth and development in that area. So it's a project that we have been looking forward to getting before you to try to seek your approval. The project is approximately $8.6 million. That'll be paid for by Harnett Regional Water Reserves. So if there's any questions about anything, you should have that material in your packet. If you've got any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
How long is this project going to take?
Hopefully not long. A project like this doesn't require a lot of review and approval at the state level. It's not like doing a treatment plant or something that's a lot more technical. So just upgrading a pump station and running a sewer line. Like I said, we've already got the survey. Our department's already paid for that survey separate from the capital project budget here. So we should be able to get that approval forthwith and move forward pretty quickly. And then hopefully we can get this project done year and a half.
So we're looking at maybe sometime late 2023, early 24.
That's a very good time frame, along that time frame, early 24, somewhere around there. I think a lot's going to depend upon our ability to get contractors and really just how much interest is in this type project, with all the other work being considered, with all the ARPA funds out there and everything else. It's an interesting time to bid construction work. So we'll find out.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I have some comments. I mean, this is outstanding. So I appreciate your help, Coley's help. This has been a long time coming. It's going to do great service down there on the western side, allow us to bring in some more commercial and retail growth and stuff that we've been looking for, allow that. So I thank you and everybody's for their hard work. It's definitely been a long time coming. So thank you.
You're welcome. We're looking forward to doing the project because it gives us a lot of flexibility, not only in southwestern portion of the county, but also in the Anderson Creek section of the county. And so it's a really good project for the county overall. And again, the time delay, we've wanted to do this for years, was just getting Fort Bragg to approve. But they gave us that approval before the current commander left, the base commander. So we're in good shape there. So again, we've already surveyed the property, ready to move forward. So we look forward to it.
Is this the project that's going to open up some additional capacities for Anderson Creek Club?
What it'll do is the existing force main that leaves Spout Springs it sort of follows cross country across Fort Bragg property just to the east of Lexington subdivision. So it sort of follows Nursery Road and crosses Nursery Road and goes back toward the intersection of Overhills Road and Ray Road. And then it dumps into a large gravity, a 24-inch gravity main we have right there. Our problem in Anderson Creek is that 24-inch line is nearing capacity. So we kind of kill two birds with one stone with this project. It allows us to send less flow to Anderson Creek, which opens up that gravity line. So like the Anderson Creek subdivision is north of that gravity line, so they can build the appropriate infrastructure to get to that line if they need to. And so it opens up a lot of development in Anderson Creek as well. It's sort of a byproduct of what we're doing on 87.
Thank you. So basically, you're just giving us an update. There's nothing for us to approve or anything like that. Is that correct?
No, the project ordinance should be approved, put on the agenda to be approved at the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll put the project ordinance on the consent agenda if no one has any objections. And all right, very good.
Mr. Chair, I would like to second Commissioner Nichols' comments. I know this is a project that Mr. Ward and his folks have recognized for a long time, and it's great to see it coming to fruition. I appreciate your efforts as well, Stu. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I know Anderson Creek will be happy to hear this. All right, next item, consultant agreement with MBD Consulting Engineers.
Correct. This is just a sequel to the existing thing that we talked about. This is the engineering for that project and getting that approved so they can go ahead and start the design. Once the capital project is approved at the board meeting, then they can go forward and complete the design, get everything to the state, and we can and begin in earnest.
Any questions or consensus of the board is to approve MBD? Okay, we'll put that on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. All right. Mr. Price, Ms. Lambert, Mr. Drexler, talk to us about the Riverside project.
Good deal. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Hope everybody's doing well. What I have before you is just give you an update on the Riverside project. So we've been spending a lot of time, energy, and effort looking at this since you passed the last project ordinance a short while ago. And so what I'm going to do this morning is kind of give you an overview of kind of what we're thinking, and any questions, concerns, or comments that you have, be glad to listen to that. And so basically what has happened is now we have put together an RFQ. In just a minute, Lynn is going to come and present, and she's going to show a lot of maps about what we're thinking and feeling, how this is going to be laid out. She's going to talk about the site description and the scope of work of what we're thinking and feeling as far as the drainage in this particular area. And do keep in mind that this comes from an extensive study that Wetland Solution provided for us. So we're kind of following that model as far as what we put together in this scope. So we've broken it out into four different areas, which we feel is going to be the best for this particular project. The first one is starting with the culverts and the drainage ditches. We have been in contact with NCDOT. Our county engineer, Bill Drexler, has had contact with them. We know exactly where those culverts are at and what we need to do. Kind of an unusual situation. The second phase of this is what's called Tire Mountain, as far as what you'll see in some pictures in just a minute. Don't know where that came from or how it got there, but we do have a plan to get that out. We've been in contact with our landfill director, Chad Bean, and we have a process for how we're going to handle that. And then third and fourth, we're looking at possible monitoring wells and maintenance trails to look at this particular area. So I'd like to thank Lynn and Bill for their hard work and the time that they put into this. And I'd also like to thank the board and Commissioner McCoy, especially for staying in touch with the Riverside community, keeping them aware of what's going on. I think this will be a very good project for that particular area. And so now I'm going to ask Lynn to come and just kind of explain the scope of the RFP and show the pictures and the maps of how we plan on doing this. And we'll give you a time frame and then answer any questions that you may have.
All right, good morning. As Coley said, we have followed up on the Wetland Solutions study that we had done of the Riverside community area to try to figure out how to alleviate some of the drainage challenges that they have there in that community. It is sort of a unique situation that they have out there. But we have broken the project down into 4 different phases. The project as a whole we felt like needed to be broken out simply because each phase was so different than the phase before. We didn't feel like one particular service provider was going to be able to fulfill all the needs that this project was calling for. So the first phase that we're looking at is culvert and drainage ditch improvements. This is an overall map of the area. Currently, there are 4 different culvert areas that we're looking at in the Riverside community. These are on private property. These were identified in the study. So these are separate than the culverts that we're also currently working with DOT to make improvements on. So we are at the point where we are ready to reach out to individual landowners for landowner permission to further explain the details of the project and secure their permission to move forward. We have already attended 3 community meetings with the community as a whole, and I know Commissioner McCoy has attended additional meetings to communicate with the community members as well. But we are ready to move forward with that individual landowner communication. And what this will consist of, culvert 1 is a culvert that has failed in a non-channelized drainage area. So this is basically a flat wetland type area that is not a traditional channelized ditch. And so what we're proposing there is 3 18-inch culverts in order to carry that water on through that area and cause it not to back up. We're also proposing a 50-foot clean out on each side of that culvert to further ensure that water can flow through freely through that area. That is a farm road that goes across that culvert. That land has changed hands within the past year or so, but this problem has been coming for several years. This is not something that's happened overnight. Location 2 is a residential driveway culvert there. The culvert that is currently in place is we feel like it is sized properly and the culvert itself is in good shape, but the drainage ditch going out from either direction of the culvert needs some maintenance. So we're proposing to do a ditch clean out of 100 feet on each side, upstream and downstream from that drainage culvert to help water more freely flow through the area. Location 3, that is another residential culvert that appears to be on an old driveway between 2 residences. It's not a primary driveway. We're proposing to install a new culvert there that's larger, a 30-inch culvert versus the much smaller one that's currently in place, and then clean out that ditch 200 feet on either side of that culvert to help water really flow through that community, hopefully a whole lot better. That one will actually catch road water that comes off of Bun Level Irwin Road there, whereas now that culvert's too small and it just can't it can't handle the capacity and often causes backup. And then location 4 is off Gentry Road. This one does involve a DOT culvert under Gentry Road, so we will not be doing any work to the culvert. However, we are proposing to clean out the ditch that is connected to that culvert that carries the water away from Gentry Road 200 feet in either direction. And so we feel like by doing this, it will really help the water to flow more freely, will remove that vegetative debris and any sediment, return those ditches back to what we see as their originally designed state. That would allow water to flow much more freely, and hopefully as that water is able to exit the community after these large rain events, this community will hopefully not experience the same level of flooding and or water just remaining in place and staying stagnant. That's been the main issue with this community is it's so flat in this area that water just doesn't move very easily at all. There's no hill or slope for gravity to push it along. And so it doesn't take much to make that water just stop and sit. And so therefore we're having moisture issues in the home or homes, mosquito issues, snake issues. And so hopefully these improvements in this area will help alleviate that for these citizens. Any questions about phase 1? For phase two, we feel like we can run this pretty much at the same time as phase one. However, we felt like different equipment and skills were going to be needed to carry out this project. This is what Coley was referring to as Tire Mountain. This is a pile of tires. This is just one pile of tires that look like they have been very strategically placed in a wooded area, and they are right along a drainage ditch for this community close to the Cape Fear River. And so through the study and community observations, we feel like that this debris is keeping water from exiting the community. It's slow in its flow, and so this pile of tires needs to be removed to return that channel back to its natural intended flow of water. And so we foresee this being several tandem loads of tires to be removed, and we have communicated with Solid Waste to be able to partner with them with the program that they have in partnership with the state that will allow us to remove this tire mountain or pile of abandoned tires that is in this community. Once we get through phase 1 and 2, those are really the two phases that we feel like are going to create the most improvements within the community so that they will be better prepared to handle our next large rain event. Hopefully that won't be anytime soon, but we always need to be prepared. But moving into phase 3, this is where we're looking at the long-term maintenance monitoring. We're looking at putting in a maintenance trail system, not a walking trail system, but a maintenance trail system along the channels A, B, and C there. These run through the same mapped area as you saw in the previous map through that residential area. This would be a trail that would simply be good enough to run an ATV down or a tractor with a rotary cutter behind it a couple times a year. We would have it mulched out by a service provider, and then we would put it in our plan of work for our office to go through this area a couple times a year so that we can monitor, and if we see any problems developing, then notify those residents and landowners that further action needs to happen in those areas in order to keep the water freely moving through that area. Installation of the monitoring wells we also think is an important piece. These are simple Bluetooth devices that we can work off of an iPad, and we can monitor when water levels are rising above normal. And so if that happens, we know that if we've not had a large rain event in the last several days, that there's something not functioning properly within this drainage system. And so again, we need to go down the maintenance trails and see if we can pinpoint where the area of the issue is. And so both of those would be utilized for years to come to assist the community in keeping the drainage going through the area. And then phase 4, this was a portion of the study that we received that we feel like needs a little bit further consideration before we change the flow of water in that area. It's for several different reasons. One reason is that there have been houses located where the study says that the flow of water should naturally go. And so, of course, we don't want to return that flow of water back to the state where you see the arrows pointing there without further study as to is this really the intended flow and what impact is it going to have on those homes if we return that flow of water back to the direction that you see there. It also impacts a utility easement. And so, of course, that's going to take much more work and coordination with the utility there before we can ever even begin to plan to start work here. But phases 1 and 2, we plan to run simultaneously at the same time, and we are ready to put forward the requests for proposals for that to gain a service provider for that part of the project. Are there any questions?
What's your estimated time on phases 1 and 2? Because that seems like that's gonna be the quick fix,
Right.
quick being
Right.
subjective. But, items 3 and 4 look like long-term maintenance to your fix, but
Right.
if we get phases 1 and 2 done and we get a hurricane coming through, hopefully we'll eliminate some flooding that we've experienced in the past.
Exactly. So we are ready to move forward and work with finance and legal on approval of the request for proposal to gain a service provider to do the work for us. And so once that provider is selected, with this type of work, these being fairly simple residential culverts, I'm saying 6 months if we can quickly secure a provider, that they should be able to have this work done. Of course, it's contingent on weather.
Sure. So basically, it's gonna take a month to process the RFP and get your bids and that kind of thing, and then you're saying 6 months after that. So actually, we're talking 7 months
Right.
from the time we send out the RFP until the project's completed. So that'll be what,
Spring.
spring?
Yeah, yeah. But I feel like that's, for this type of work, that would be a reasonable expectation to set for the service provider.
Any other questions about this project?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I do have a few questions. And I think I may have heard this in the beginning, but I believe in the original study, there was some culvert work that need to be done by DOT. That is outside of this. How are those conversations going? Is that coming to fruition?
Right. So we have been in communication with DOT, and Coley, you may have, but we have asked that they do follow-up study. Of course, they're not going to go and install culverts based on the study that we had done, but we do feel like it kind of provides them some backing and encouragement to further study the issue. But they have said that they have had a crew to go out and look a couple different times, and they are pushing along in their processes in terms of the potential to have. What we were asking for was 2 additional culverts to be placed under Bun Level Irwin Road, that if you look at LIDAR and how the water should be flowing based on LIDAR mapping through the community, the absence of those culverts under Bun Level Irwin Road are part of the issue causing this water to back up.
And that may answer my next question, because I believe in that study, there was some thought that there was a culvert that should be that nobody could find. So did we
Right.
discover it was not there, or that?
It has still not been found.
Okay. So it's really clogged up then, I'm assuming. So. And then, of course, and then my last question, I know there are a number of issues contributing to this, but I know there's been discussion of beaver activity, beaver dams and all that. Is that still, I know that's going to be ongoing because they're just going to be there forever, but
Right.
Once we get into this plan, I'm assuming those will be taken out, and then as we have the monitoring going on, then that can be taken care of as it reappears.
Right. And truthfully, from the study and from our staff observations from going out and walking this whole watershed area, because this is really not just a 1, 2, or 3 property drainage issue, it's truly an entire watershed concern. We're not finding as many beaver dams and beaver issues in the area as we thought we might when we first went out there and started getting the calls. That's not to say that they're not there in certain areas, but the areas that have been identified to be what we feel like are the main problems that are causing their drainage concerns are old drainage ditches that have been there for generations. And they are no longer functioning at the intended capacity.
Well, that's good to hear. Obviously, a much bigger problem than beaver dams. So
Exactly.
if we can get those corrected, hopefully we can have some long-term resolution to
That's right.
to
And
this
we,
issue.
the county does have the partnership with the BMAP program. We just met with Mr. Trout, I believe it was last Friday, and discussed how BMAP is available and the impacts that they have had this past year on work for residents within the county. And so part of that long-term maintenance trail, that will give our staff easy access to these drainage areas. And as we see these beaver issues, if they do start to pop up in new areas or old areas, then we can work with those landowners to utilize the BMAP program to hopefully alleviate the issue.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you foresee any problems with the landowners there in doing this project?
I don't. From the communications that we have had so far with the community meetings, everyone seems to be very appreciative of the efforts that have been made and very willing. They themselves are the ones that pointed out some of these issues or areas that they thought may be of issue and wanted guidance on how to alleviate the problem. And so I'm hoping after. I feel confident that after some additional one-on-one communication that they'll be ready to move forward.
Well, I just want to say this. Thank you, Lynn, Coley, and our engineer, Mr. Trout. I got to say, when I spoke to you about it in the very beginning, you took on the project as well as the commissioners here. This has been a long project. And this has been something that these citizens in this area has been living with for, I would say, decades.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all that you all are doing to make these people's lives comfortable. Because I can't imagine living in under those conditions, but they have done it for many years. But better days are coming. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let me ask this question. We can make all these changes, we can do all this we want to, but if we don't educate citizens in that community so that we don't get another Tire Mountain,
Right.
stopping up streams and that kind of thing, what efforts are being made to educate and to prevent this from reoccurring?
So this community has a active
Community organization.
community development association, and they have welcomed us already
Right.
to come to their meetings, and so they are very open, and that will be a part of our long-term maintenance plan, that as we go through on a probably twice per year basis to monitor, that we can then report back to the community, and that will be a great opportunity to share not only what we see, but provide that education of, if this occurs, then this will happen.
Actually, very good point, Chairman. And you're right. I think this community is very vigilant. This is going to be a win-win situation. And just my opinion, I think they've got to help us be our eyes and ears as far as what's going on out there. There's a lot of time, energy, effort, and money being spent to help, and it's a win-win situation. But if they could help us, if they see something that it looks wrong or something going on or somebody piling something, then we can get on it very quickly. And as far as the beaver management, that's going to continue as well. And then the long-term plan with the maintenance trails, we'll be out there periodically looking as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
I just don't want this board
Totally
in
agree.
4 or 5 years. I don't want people saying, y'all haven't done anything like's been said about some of our predecessors. But that's why I asked that question.
Well, I can assure you that is not going to happen, because I've been there to their meetings on several occasions. These citizens are well educated on what's going on. They're well educated on how to fix it. And I want to say this. It's going to cost a lot of money for us to do this. The one thing I do want to point out, citizens don't know how government works. They think that if a project, we agree to a project, it's gonna happen tomorrow. It may take years for it to all come together, you know. And as far as the ties are concerned, we don't know if any of those citizens had anything to do with dumping those ties. Because there's dumps all over this county, especially on the streets. Now it's a pattern for people, when they get ready to renew, replacing their bed equipment, not the springs and all of that, they just dump them side the road.
Right.
So we need to educate the public as well as educate the community. The community is educated, because I've been there on several occasions. And Lynn, you have played a huge part in educating those citizens in that area. So I feel confident that we will move forward on this and give these people some help. Thank you all for all that you've done.
So, do we move this to the consent agenda to authorize the,
You can, Chairman, or you can give us permission to move forward, I guess,
Yeah.
either way is
Because
fine.
the project ordinance is
Yeah.
completed already,
Right.
We
so the
just-
authorization is
We
done.
just wanted your approval to make sure you were good with the scope. The RFP is gonna be moving forward, and we're gonna get this rolling as quick as we can.
Yeah, it was a
We've
little more
already-
complex, and so with regards to the multiple RFP types, and so we felt it important for you to know our game plan going forward, and we'll get going on it.
so if the project ordinance is already done?
Yep, it's complete.
We'll receive this as information and nothing further for us to do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might have a point of personal privilege here before Mr. Dreitzer leaves. I noticed, Mr. Stewart came and talked with us about the issue of the flooding there at 421 Harnett Central Road. I noticed DOT had come up with an alternate plan, I guess, rather than having to cut 421 to put in a culvert big enough to handle that water. Thank you for what you did in identifying that problem and bringing it to their attention. And, they put 2 big culverts in under Harnett Central Road, so hopefully that's going to take care of that problem. And I appreciate that. It's great to see, as somebody said something about the government process, Mr. Commissioner McCoy, to see it finally come to fruition. It never happens as fast as any of us want it to happen, but hopefully that will alleviate that flooding that they had at the church there at the corner. Thank you, sir.
I just want to add, we have some happy citizens over there at City Grove, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. All right, we will now move to a discussion on the Southeastern Development Commission. Mr. Lockamy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I was tasked today with coming before you to talk about the SEDC. The SEDC is the Southeastern Development Commission. It's not only an organization, but it's a district. And when we talk about the SEDC, what we're really talking about is the EDA. It's the ability for the EDA, which is the Economic Development Administration, a federal organization, to be able to distribute funds for grants through infrastructure improvements and a variety of other things throughout the country to aid in job creation and retainment. Okay? So the Southeastern Economic Development Commission is an economic development district that receives and administers EDA grants, and that's Economic Development Administration. The EDA's mission is to provide federal economic development assistance in distressed areas through grant programs. The EDA was created in 1965 from the Public Works and Economic Development Act, and that act provided for the creation of economic development districts to be the primary bodies to basically help develop regional strategic plans and receive and administer grants on behalf of the eligible applicants within those districts. The SEDC district was created 3 years later after the 1965 Public Works Act. It was created in 1968 and serves a 12-county area you see on that map there, right there, including municipalities. So let me make sure I relay this. It includes municipalities counties, institutions of higher education, and public or private nonprofit economic development organizations, kind of like the new Harnett County Economic Development Partnership. So those are the eligible entities that can apply for and receive Economic Development Administration grant funding. The SCDC district originally contained 10 charter counties. And so Harnett and Richmond County ended up joining later. And so while that district was created in 1968, Harnett did not join until 1997. Richmond joined later as well and was part, we know, were part of another district at one point. Okay. Economic Development Districts and Council of Governments. Here's COGS. Here's another acronym we're going to throw at you, okay? There's some alignment in North Carolina as it comes to when it comes to both of these. There are 14 districts, economic development districts for the EDA that administer and receives their grants. In North Carolina, these districts currently align with the Council of Government Regions, with the exception of the SCDC district, our district, which contains 3 council of governments: Mid-Carolina, Lumber River, and Cape Fear. The districts were created in 1968, while COGS were created 4 years later in 1972. Some districts and council of governments have realigned and combined services since their formation. An example of that is in the middle of the map, the Northwest Piedmont. And so you see it's labeled as Piedmont Triad. There used to be a section of that actually that was 2 districts at one point. And so Northwest Piedmont ended up dissolving, and then also PD dissolved. PD was down where the Lumber River Council of Government region is now. I believe Richmond County was in that at one point. Okay. Economic development districts are responsible for developing these regional strategies that I mentioned earlier, their strategic plans, and they act as intermediaries between the Economic Development Administration and their eligible applicants, meaning the counties, the towns, the cities, and the colleges. Regional strategies are called CEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies. They're created every 5 years and serve as the strategy and blueprint for each economic development district. Harnett County is currently participating in our 5-year plan renewal. And so we recently went down to Fayetteville to participate in that process, had representation from the counties and also the municipalities. We had representation of that one from the town of Irwin and also the city of Dunn, and then Harnett leadership as well. All right. When member communities apply for Economic Development Administration grants, their applications are judged on a variety of factors, including alignment with the district CEDS. Okay. And what that means is that if we were going to apply for a grant, then the EDA would want to look at Harnett County and say, okay, Harnett, are you going through that regional process every 5 years and working with your peers to establish your priorities and goals and plan? And if you are, is what you're requesting right now, does it align with that plan? Okay. When applying for EDA grants, communities must provide a proof of CEDS compliance, meaning that they want to make sure that the eligible entity is in compliance and participating through that 5-year regional strategy. A letter has to be written from the district representative, which in our case is the SCDC. Okay. All right. Member communities pay annual dues to the SCDC at a rate of 9 cents per capita based on the decennial census. And so Harnett County pays, right now we're paying a little over $12,000 annually based on the recent 2020 census numbers. Our county, including municipalities and educational institutions, have applied for and received EDA grants, with the SCDC serving as the grant administrator and liaison to the EDA. In '97, Harnett County, the town of Lillington, received $750,000 for wastewater treatment plant upgrades to accommodate new jobs and investment at where Champion Home Builders is at now. In 2001, the county received $60,000 in EDA funding for some form of feasibility and marketing study. In 2009, the county received $1 million for construction of water, sewer, roads, and drainage to aid in the creation of Brightwater Business Park. Campbell University applied for applied through the SCDC for EDA funding for their nursing and health science facility. They were able to secure $2.5 million in grant funding. EDA grants typically require full-time job creation to be tied to the grant, and so Campbell wasn't sure if they could meet the logistics of the reporting requirements and that new private job creation, and so they decided to forego the grant funding at that point. Okay. While administering EDA grants is the SCDC's primary mission, they also assist with grant writing and technical assistance for other grant programs. They've helped the city of Dunn and town of Lillington apply for, receive right at $1.5 million in Golden Leaf disaster relief funding to repair sewer infrastructure due to Hurricane Matthew. The SCDC helped the town of Coates receive $46,000 from a USDA grant to basically construct a downtown master plan for them. We currently have, since we're a member of this district, we have board member representation. It includes 4 members from each county. Those members include 1 elected official, 1 private sector representative, 1 minority representative, and the Director of Economic Development. Harnett County, we currently have Commissioner Lou Weatherspoon serving as the elected official, myself serving as the Director of Economic Development, Patsy Carson as the business leader, and Stanley Price as the minority representative. Okay. The district's policy, they have a membership policy that allows communities to withdraw from the SCDC district with a 2-year notice to remain in good standing of the SCDC district. A member county that is withdrawing its membership needs to pay those dues during that 2-year period. Once withdrawn from the district, a county may rejoin the district by executing a resolution expressing interest in membership. The application for restatement must be approved by 100% of the member counties. Counties are prohibited from withdrawing and rejoining at random. If a county drops its membership twice, it will not be eligible to rejoin the district program. And so that's the guidance that each of the districts have gotten from the EDA that in regards to that. Okay. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Yeah. We've been a member for how many years?
Since 1997.
1997, that's what I see on my computer here. By being a member, does this help us create jobs here in this county?
Yes, ma'am. And so there's been times in our history where we have taken on proactive economic development efforts to create business parks and the college launch new initiatives and buildings. And those entities within our county, including our county, have applied for that funding and been able to extend it various infrastructure and things of that nature throughout the county.
Okay.
What I've seen is that the more proactive you are and the more work you're doing in economic development, the more grants you're applying for and the more funding is coming in.
Well, that should help us now because we are more proactive now with trying to bring and create jobs here in this county. Yeah, I understand it a little more.
Okay. It's complicated how it all works. A lot of acronyms in there.
Any additional questions concerning this matter?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Mr. Trout, you want to talk about the door locks and been in
Yes,
the news
sir.
a lot
Thank
in
you,
the last
Chairman.
day?
Back when the Uvalde, Texas shooting occurred, there was question brought to me regarding current status of funding for a need that the school district had identified related to the completion of a project they had ongoing related to the installation of door locks to their schools and also the installation of cameras in their schools. That project had been moving along and so forth, but there was still funding needed in order to complete that project. After discussion with some of the commissioners, it was recommended to see if I could determine a place that we could pull funding in order to complete that project and provide all the funding necessary for them to place the orders for the locks and cameras and get them installed. So working with Kimberly Honeycutt, our finance officer, she was able to identify a fund that exists related to school district funding for a project that would be available for us to do that. So I'll let her cover how that funding came about and what it was for, and then seek your, we will look to bring this back at the next meeting to get your formal approval to initiate this project and get the funding to the school district.
So as you may recall, last year the county issued general obligation bonds in the amount of $43 million in order to construct the Northwest Harnett School. When we went out to the market, because of the market conditions, we received an additional $6.3 million in a premium. So that gave us right around $49 million. Of that, only $35 million was needed to use toward the construction of Northwest because the $10 million received from the capital needs-based grant. So what we did is we created a project ordinance to capture the activity for Northwest school construction, and then the remaining bond proceeds and that premium we placed over in another project. I believe the ordinance is titled General Obligation Bonds for 2021. So what we do is actually those funds will sit there and they can be used for other school capital construction needs and purposes. So I gave you, before the meeting started, a sample of what it's kind of a modified project ordinance to show you what the original budget was, and that project was just a placeholder for those remaining funds. And then we would actually use that to be able to put these cameras and door locks, because we are required to disperse those funds within a finite amount of time from receiving them, or we may be subject to arbitrage, meaning we'll have to pay the IRS for use of those funds. So we need to try and go ahead, and so because this was a project that, from what I'm understanding, was very critical need of the schools, that's where I would like to recommend that we use the money.
Any questions, Ms. Honeycutt, on this project?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
May I speak? Ms. Honeycutt, I think couple years ago, we discussed this, and we discussed the funding for the door locks, the security cameras and all of that. I mean, did we fund any of that at that time?
Well, at the time, what they had started to do is that within the amount of funding or capital funding that we were able to provide them at the time, they have started trying to address some door locks and some security measures, but this would be, if I'm understanding, the last full measure of the door locks in all the schools.
How many in the county do we not have the cameras and the locks on?
Well, all the doors have locks. What this would be electronic door locks.
Okay.
So you could, they would lock automatically. You could set them to lock or unlock at certain times. They would all require badge access, so there would be a record of who accessed any door at any particular time. So it's just a additional security for the exterior doors. And the camera upgrades basically are just upgrades from old analog systems to the current high-tech digital systems that allow you to actually be able to tell who's looking at the camera rather than just seeing a silhouette.
These just doors that you have building access from the outside, or is it all?
It would be, it would just exterior doors. It would not cover every exterior door, but it would cover every exterior door that is used for egress in and out Right.
So
There
if you-
are some doors that are there, let's say in the case of a fire emergency, that basically they're not used during the day, and that would not come, in other words, this funding would meet the majority, but there would still be a few that would be keyed.
Well, I only ask this question because in these days and time, it's very, very important that we have our school doors secured for our children here in the county. And I gotta say that I'm very glad this discussion came up some years ago. And at that time, things were not like they are today. So thank you.
any other questions or comments? Is it the consensus of the board to authorize the use of these funds?
Yes.
Put that on the consent agenda. All right. Mr. Trout, you want to open up the discussion on the legislative appropriation, or would you like me to do that?
I guess I'll make just a couple comments, and obviously you can fill in more details. But the bottom line here is that this county, Harnett County, has been lucky enough to receive $1.5 million in funding from the state legislature. That funding has been allocated to a set of projects and locations that are identified in the list that was included in your packet. So we are getting ready to move forward with signing an agreement with the state related to the funding, to receiving this funding, and then begin to do the distribution of the funds as they're listed here. Sharon, I'll let you continue on with the discussion.
And I think I sent everyone an email, I believe it was Friday, that had an attachment that showed the list of projects that have been selected to receive funding out of this $1.5 million. As you can see, it includes a number of nonprofits. It includes the municipalities, the chambers, and it's also got quite a bit of funding going to various veteran organizations. It took over a month to come up with all of these organizations. And Commissioner Johnson, I did talk to Mayor Elmore about the Dunn History Museum. I asked him to, if he could, take some of that money Dunn's getting to help you guys out.
I appreciate it.
So that's sort of the status right now. I think every department that's funding part of this 1.5 million with the state has to certify the budget. And that should be done this week, is what I was told yesterday. We anticipate, Kimberly, in about 2 weeks, I hope you'll come in one day and find 1.5 million in the county's coffers. They said mid-September.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually received an email yesterday regarding a form that we need to complete in order to receive our money, and I'll get that to finance, and they'll be able to file that, and we'll be able to be ready to go. It relates to where the money is to be deposited and so forth. So Allie Fouts, our NC Lead Fellow, is going to be helping us with this project. There are many, many organizations that need to be contacted and receive information, the pertinent data information related to address, where to send checks to, where to make ACH deposit, etc., the various requirements. What you'll see is as the next few weeks to months go, you will see an agreement that will be on your consent agenda for each of these organizations that they'll sign and that we sign, because it is state tax dollars, and so we have to make sure that they agree that they'll use this for public purposes. And that's the basic way it works, and so we have to make sure that they are agreeing that they will do that, and within the confines of the law. So we'll work through that, but you'll see an agreement for the city of Dunn for food banks and so on. They'll come, they'll just pop on, we'll just pop them on the consent agenda and move forward. And it's a few page agreement, so it shouldn't be onerous in any way for the organizations.
And many of these organizations have already been contacted.
Yeah.
Told they were getting the money.
Yeah.
They're already expecting it. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to say this. This money is coming from the state legislature.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear.
Yes.
Simply because if we don't make it clear, people are automatically assume the commissioner is coming from the county.
No.
This money is coming from the state legislature. And I am glad to see all these nonprofits on here. Because when you have organizations that are doing things to benefit our citizens in this county that we are not doing, they deserve funding. I don't care what anybody say. That's where I feel about it. So, thank you. We need to thank the legislature. In fact, the senator called me too as well to give me a heads up on it.
I think he called you about the Shawtown Association.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Senator Bergen, if you happen to see him, thank him for this because this was his baby. He got this done last budget. And I can't say enough. This is a one-time deal. Who knows what we'll have, if anything, next year. So even though we're sending money to nonprofits, it doesn't mean we're going to fund them next year or the year after. It's a one-shot deal. So if anybody asks the question, you know the answer.
Well, that's why I brought it up. I wanted to be clear.
Yes, ma'am. So, all right. Any other questions or comments about these allocations? All right. I guess, Mr. Appel, you want to talk about the sale of some property on Monroe Lane in Irwin?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. So the county owns a piece of property on Monroe Lane, which is off of 421, kind of between the airport and the town of Irwin. It's about a half-acre piece of land that we own, as you can see on the map here. We acquired this property back in 1980 via public sale for $350. So it's been obviously sitting unused for a number of years at this point. We received an offer to purchase this from a citizen. And so I wanted to get the board's feedback on whether to proceed. If we move forward, obviously I'll bring forward a resolution to start the upset bid process. This citizen, go back a little bit. The tax value of this property is $14,520, and this individual has offered the tax value at this time for this piece of property. So I did check with our departments to see if there's any use for it. Planning, HRW, no one had any use for his property. Again, it's been sitting vacant since 1980. So just want to get feedback from the board whether to proceed with this. If so, I'll present a resolution next week that will lay out the official offer and the process that would begin for the upset bid.
This is the new tax value, right?
This is the news value.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Appel? Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing your recommendation.
Yes, sir. I'll bring back the resolution next week. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item is a review of applications to serve on various boards. I'd like to The Board of Adjustment, I'd like to move that to our 9/13 work session for consideration then.
9/13, and I would like to move the one for District 1 to 9/13 too.
Okay, Commissioner McCoy is asking to, under Home and Community Care Block Grant Committee, there's 2 applicants for for District 1. She'd like to move those to, for consideration on 9/13 also. Any objections on moving any of these? Okay. What about that leaves the Harnett County Planning Board. We have a resignation there. I think Ramsey's moving to a different county. It's pretty cut and dried. And I guess we have a Board of Health. We have an application from a Dr. Washington, DDS, in District 3. Are you good with that? So if that's the case, we will put the Board of Health and the Harnett County Planning Board resignation on the consent agenda. If you know, the person that's resigning on the planning board is an at-large member, so if you know someone that might be interested in applying for the planning board, have them fill out an application and get it in as soon as possible. Ms. McCoy, did you want to address the way we?
Yeah, I do want to address this because it really concerns me of how we appoint people to these boards. Now, in the past, I would say that we have always allowed the commissioners to make the decision of who serves in their districts. And I feel that is the proper way to go, simply because we may not know all of our constituents in our districts, but we know those that we feel that can do or want to do or fulfill the work that we need to serve on these boards here. In the past, not in the past, but I would say in the last year or two, we have drifted away from that. And I don't feel that that's the right way to go, because it has always been past history here, since I've been sitting on this board, and I've been here 8 years, that the commissioners have the preference of who is appointed to these positions. If someone if someone's term is up, then I feel the proper way for us to address this is that position should come back to the commissioner to make a decision who fulfills that position, as well as any appointees that come in. We should have knowledge of those those citizens. We should make that decision too. Another thing is that I think it's unfair for us to make decisions based on what has been given to us on our reports for our county commissioners meeting, because there are citizens that communicate to us as to where they want to serve on commissioners in our district. And that, the way that it's done now, I don't think that those citizens have the proper time or whatever to fill out the application for us to get the applications. For them to be included on the list as well as those applications that are coming in. So I'm just saying that I still think, and it's the proper way to do it, is that we are the ones, the commissioners here, for each district, be the one to assign or make a decision as to who serve on our county commission board based on the districts that these applications are coming from. If I'm wrong and what I'm thinking is the right way for us to go, let me know, because this is what has been done the 8 years that I have been here. And it's always been in the best interest of our constituents in each one of our districts.
So what I'm hearing you say is, instead of the committees like going ahead and reappointing, then it comes back to us.
It comes
Correct.
back to
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
Because you may have someone else in your district that might be interested in serving. And I think it's only fair to give all the constituents a chance if someone wants to serve. Stop this reappointing people without giving the other constituents a chance. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. I'm in my district, and I don't know all of my constituents, but when I feel that there's one that's willing to serve and willing to put the attention and the time in it, because this is volunteer work. I would rather consider those kind of constituents rather than looking on the sheet here and seeing names that I know nothing about. Does that make sense?
What you're asking for does make sense. Do you want, as we get applications in your district, do you want to have those applications, a copy of those applications forwarded to you? Or would you rather wait for them to get them at the board meeting?
I'm saying in the past, it has always been that those applications was forwarded to us.
As soon as they were received?
As soon as they received.
I agree with that.
And if that position that comes up, we should be notified as soon as that position comes up, because there may be other constituents that want to fill those applications out as well.
We can handle that. I mean, that's not a hard issue. And I think the other thing we look at is even a reappointment requires it to come before the board. And I think
Right.
that even if they want to continue to have, say that organization wants to see that person continue in their role, it still has to come back before the board for approval. And so we get applications pretty regularly. I mean, they come, people are aware of the board opening, they can apply for the board opening. Sometimes they're prompted by a commissioner to apply, sometimes they're not. It's open to a decision and recommendation of the commissioners, and that's what we go by. But what we can do is watch for when we get an application for an open position, ensure that the commissioners receive those applications. And just like, I mean, in here, there's a resume regarding the doctor and the dentist that is applying. Information is provided on the application as to their background and their skills, as to whether they qualify or should be considered for the position. So that's what we've done so far. But I think what you're really looking for is a little more advanced notice as it relates to that. And so we'll move that notice up as far as what we're sending out and make sure that you're aware of when the opening. Sometimes, though, for us, I will say, sometimes we're not always made immediately aware of a new position being open, and so we'll let you know as soon as we're notified. We don't. I don't attend every one of those meetings, so I'm not always aware of when we lose someone from that particular board or commission. But we'll try and improve getting the notice out to you earlier regarding an opening and then who's applied.
Thank you for that, because I feel like doing it that way, it gives everybody a chance, all the constituents a chance that wants to serve. And I just don't want us to say that, hey, so you serve on a board, that you automatically reappoint. Thank you so much.
Any further questions or comments about this? Okay, all right, we'll move along then. You've got you know which ones are on the consent agenda?
Yes. You have. You got them.
Yes, Board of Health and the Planning Board.
The resignation.
All right, Scout, the county manager's report.
Really just want to cover some things that are included in your packet as it relates to a couple of things that are upcoming in our calendar. Reminder that Labor Day is next Monday. County offices will be closed. The board meeting, as the chairman mentioned, is on Tuesday at 9 a.m. You were notified about the flag raising ceremony on September 8th for Staff Sergeant Perez. Work session on the 13th. Another big event that's coming up is the POWMI Remembrance Day. I have a very special program. Harnett County resident is going to talk about his experiences as a POW, so looking forward to that. So, also included is the budget, as I mentioned in my weekly report. The CIP has started, and so we are beginning that process and outlines the calendar as we go through November, working on the CIP and eventually bringing it to you for consideration. This puts us back on the more normal schedule. Last year, you delayed your CIP approval based on giving me a shot to review it before you approved it. I'm very excited about being able to be involved in the process from the beginning for the CIP and keep it on a normal calendar so that we aren't squeezing it and rushing any decision. As I mentioned in my report, we do have a few new projects, important projects that have been identified by staff, and looking forward to going through those and the existing projects that we've had in the CIP in the near future. That's all I have.
Anything else? I've got one question on the agenda for Tuesday's meeting. I think I raised this question earlier. Emergency services.
Yes, and I got that answer while we were here in the meeting. Chris Appel sent me a note. Per our agreement with the fire department EMS organizations, any purchase they make that wasn't already in the budget that's greater than $20,000 has to come before the board to be approved if it wasn't in the budget. So that's in our current agreement, and so by rule, we need to add it to the agenda for approval. Now, we can look at changing the agreements in the future, so if this comes up again, that we don't have to do it, but right now, given the current agreement, we have to go ahead and move forward and add it to new business.
My question was, they want to buy a new fire truck. It's going to cost $50,000. They've got $50,000. It's not going to cost the county a penny. Why do we need to approve that? Go buy the fire truck. I mean, why do we need to vote to tell them to go buy the fire truck?
I guess it's just something that just the way it's always been done.
Well, I mean, that
Well, we can
doesn't
look
mean
at-
we can't change it.
Yeah, we can change the agreement.
It doesn't matter to me.
Sounds like bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah,
Exactly.
well, we'll work to modify it, but
That's
I got to go by the rules that I have right now, and we'll look to change it.
That's fair. I mean, I figured that's probably was the answer, but I agree with what Matt said.
Well, I believe it came back also, they received tax dollars because you approve their rate, the tax rate for that district, so they do receive, I mean, we collect those tax dollars from those districts, and so they are getting dollars from the citizens. And so I think that was just part of a process that's always been done, because you have to approve our capital, anything that's over 20. And so I think that was just kind of part of how it was done.
Larry's already reviewing the contract for the next session. I forget when this one terminates, if it's on fiscal year or not, but he's currently reviewing it, and that's one of the provisions he would like to strike out of it. So we'll do a review of that for the next contract.
I mean,
We hear you.
And rather than put it on is everybody on the board good with sticking this on the consent agenda? I don't see where we need to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Please put that on the consent agenda.
You
All
bet.
right. I believe we have need for a closed session.
Mr. Chair, prior to that, I did have one question I just wanted to
Yes, sir.
ask. Mr. Trout, I know at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Conference, I learned and they're some additional lottery money that schools could, or that districts could request,
Right.
that the county and school board could request. I think last year's amount was $300,000 for capital needs. This year's going to be $500,000, but I don't think anybody was aware that that had to be requested.
Right, that's correct.
And I think there was still some time to get last year's money. Are we on that?
We're going to check about last year's money,
Okay.
but we definitely still have time to work with the school district to get the 500,000
Okay.
for this year. And so there is a simple request form that has to be signed by both the county and by the school district to pursue that funding. And so we need to work with you in the school district to be able to capitalize on that opportunity.
Sounds good. I just wondered if there was still time to get in the window from last year. I wanted us to make sure we didn't miss that window and leave that money on the table. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into closed session for the following purposes. Consult with the county's legal counsel in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning the handling of certain litigation, including the following cases. Anderson Creek Partners LP et al. Versus Harnett County file number 17 CVS 363. PF Development Group LLC versus County of Harnett County file number 17 CVS 1361. And Kelly Waite versus Sheriff Wayne Coates et al., Harnett County file number 22 CVS 603. This motion is made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute Section 143-318.11A3.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor of going into closed session?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right. Thank everyone for coming. into open session and entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? We are adjourned. Stay here.